Awesome. As is introduced, my name is Jesse Appell. I spent time in college and in China learning Chinese, learning specifically a special type of comedy called Xiangsheng, or crosstalk comedy. We do Xiangsheng on stage. We do Xiangsheng in random people's homes. I also do Chinese language stand-up comedy, and I do improv bilingually as well. This is the first question when I say, oh, I do an obscure East Asian folk art called Xiangsheng. And people say, what is Xiangsheng? And that is a fair question. So Xiangsheng is this type of comic dialogue that's been performed in China for a long time. One of the Qing emperors passed away in the 1850s, and they decreed that there would be no more Beijing opera in Beijing. And at that time, if you were a Beijing opera performer, that's like all you did was Beijing opera. You didn't do anything else. And so you had all these performers who had all these Beijing opera skills, but now all of a sudden they couldn't make a living. So what happened is they all hit the streets and tried to invent their own art forms to try to make money. And so that created what they call the 100 Qiyi, or minor art forms. Some of these minor art forms survived to the present day. One of them was Xiangsheng. Xiangsheng is generally performed in places like these, which are tea houses. If you go to a tea house, you'll be able to sit at these big square tables, and they have 6 chairs on them, so you can bring a whole group of friends, watch the show, get some chrysanthemum tea, eat some sunflower seeds. The thing about Xiangsheng that's a lot of fun is that there's 2 roles on stage. So the person on the left side of the stage, in this case for me, is the 逗哏的, which is the joker. And then the person on the right side is the 捧哏的, which is the straight man. Basically, the joker is going to go and create all sorts of wacky situations. The straight man's going to go up on stage and try to correct them or be super uncomfortable or maybe even get sucked in along with the performance. In China, if you want to do comedy, you have to find a comedy master. So this is my comedy master, Master Ding Guangquan, who is famous in China because he is the only teacher that teaches foreign students how to do Xiangsheng. The great thing about master-student relationship is that there's all these things that are passed down all the way down from the Qing dynasty, master to student, master to student, master to student. I'm a generation of the 7th generation of Xiangsheng performers. My master is the 6th generation, and there are even comedy pieces that go all the way back to the beginning that were passed down through this sort of system. The cool thing about Xiangsheng is that even though it's this older art form, it's really evolved along with each of the different mediums that's come with it. So it went from being, a street performance art form into becoming a live performance at the tea houses, into becoming a radio comedy, into going into TV comedy, now into internet comedy. There's also live Xiangsheng. So a lot of the fun of doing comedy in China is I get to go out and actually perform live. This is a stadium that I played in Tianjin, where we had 10,000 seats. And so we were in a soccer stadium, and they just put folding chairs all the way from one end of the soccer stadium to the other end of the soccer stadium. And one thing that I learned from doing comedy for 10,000 people is that there's this weird thing that happens where the people in the back hear the joke later than the people in the front. So you'll say a joke, and then there'll be this wall of laughter going backwards in a wave all the way into the back. And it's a really cool feeling because it makes me feel like I'm super powerful. Because I know, I'll make a joke, and if the front laughs, I know the future. Because I know the people in the back, once the wave hits them, will be laughing as well. So it was a ton of fun to be able to do these sorts of shows, and it's really cool that so many people still go out and see the sorts of comedy. So if you ask a Chinese person about Xiangsheng, they're going to tell you, oh, Xiangsheng, 说学逗唱. So what does that mean? How many of you guys are studying Chinese? You have quite a few, right? Awesome. So I'm going to go through for everybody and talk a little bit about 说学逗唱. These are the 4 skills of a Xiangsheng performer. So when people go to see a Xiangsheng show, they don't just want to laugh, they want to see you do 说学逗唱. Speak, imitate, joke, and sing. So starting with speaking, 说. So the idea of going to a Xiangsheng show is that the speaker is so interesting that everything they say is going to draw in the audience. And one of the ways that they do this is by a technique they call the 贯口, which is like a little monologue. And these monologues might be funny, they might not be funny, but mainly they're used to show off the speaking ability of the performer. So I'm going to do one of these for you right now that's called The Map. And it's basically a whole bunch of country names listed together in this one little short monologue. So here it goes. It goes like this. 太平洋、印度洋、 大西洋、北冰洋、欧洲、亚洲、非洲、美洲、大洋洲、东亚、南亚、西亚、东南亚、韩国、朝鲜、蒙古、日本、越南、印度、缅甸、老挝、新加坡、菲律宾、尼泊尔、印度尼西亚、孟加拉、亚美尼亚、斯里兰卡、冰岛、丹麦、瑞典、芬兰、波兰、捷克、德国、法国、奥地利、乌克兰、爱尔兰、匈牙利、斯拉夫、摩尔多瓦、比利时、沙尼亚、多维亚、bolivia、阿尔巴尼亚、贝宁、埃及、多哥、刚果、马利、汤加、科曼、摩洛哥、冈比亚、赞比亚、赤道、加利亚、澳大利亚、新西兰、萨尔瓦多、尼加拉瓜、洪都拉斯、墨西哥、美国、加拿大。There we go. Next is 学. A lot of you who are studying Chinese know 学 as study. 学 can also mean imitate. And in this case, this is just talking about all the skills of a comedian when you want to do an accent or you want to pretend that you're like, you know, your mother or something like that. You're going to change the way you voice, you're going to change the way you stand. Example of this is I have a routine that I do where I talk about being a Chinese-speaking American in New York City. And the greatest part about this is I can totally mess with the Chinese tourists. Because the Chinese tourists will come, they're going to be taking pictures with their camera, and then I can sneak up right behind them and say like, 哇塞，这看这纽约这城市这么大, and they turn around and they're like, where was the 70-year-old Beijing cab driver immediately behind me? And then they see, and the only thing that's there is me playing on my phone. And I'm like, what? Like, it couldn't have possibly been me. It's funny because it's in New York City here, you look at me and it seems like there's a 0% chance that I would speak Chinese. Especially like a Beijing cab driver. Do. So do is joking. And that's really, it's the heart of Xiangsheng because we're here to make jokes. One of the things that I was really interested in when I went to study comedy in China is how do Chinese people make people laugh? Is the way that we make people laugh in America similar to the way they make people laugh in China? Or are they really different? And so one of the things that I found was that even though sometimes the content of the jokes will be different, the way as a comedian that you actually get the audience to laugh is very similar. Example of this is my Xiangsheng master, Ding Laoshi, wrote a book in which he enumerated the very many ways that Xiangsheng performers get people to laugh. Exaggeration, blah, blah, blah. Many ways, blah, blah, blah. Many ways, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of ways as a comedian you can make somebody laugh. And the cool thing about this is describing this, East Asian comedic performance art. It wasn't necessarily describing Saturday Night Live. But a lot of the things that you're doing in these lists, exaggerations, puns, metaphors, similes, these sort of things are the same ways that we get people to laugh in the American audience. So that's something to keep in mind is that actually there's a lot more universal to humor than you might think. And then there is one last skill, which is cheng. So singing is a very important part of Xiangsheng, and originally, remember, it comes from this Beijing opera background, where a lot of the people who are performing it would have this deep knowledge of all these different operas, and they work the operas into the performances. I have this routine that I do with my comedy master where I play an American who's just returned from America, came back to Beijing, and he's like, where were you? And I say, I started up a Beijing opera troupe. We do all Three Kingdoms stuff. So we do Three Kingdoms operas. And then as we go on and start to sing some Three Kingdoms opera stuff, it turns out he thinks we're talking about the Chinese Three Kingdoms of Wei, Shu, and Wu, and I'm talking about the Three Kingdoms of America, Mexico, and Canada. So we get this great mix-up, and we get a chance to go back and forth, and all my lyrics turn out weird, and then eventually it just comes down. He's like, can you sing actual Beijing opera? I'm like, okay, listen to me sing actual Beijing opera. 这宫上马心不爽，山人八卦学儿得藏，将身且做中军长。等到涿州已得章。There we go. There we go. This is one of those very clearly, like, if I had not studied Chinese, I would not be doing X moments. My parents are like, what are you studying today? I'm like, I'm learning how to sing Beijing opera. And they're like, oh, that's nice.